What's up, everybody? Peter Exodus O'Coffrey here. Welcome to another episode of All Things Music. And today we are looking at Drake versus Kendrick Lamar 2024. And I believe I'm going to title this Takeaways and Lessons. So, man, probably the biggest beef in the history of hip hop. At least right there with Biggie and Tupac, if not more so. But let me state right off the bat too. Let's mentioning Biggie and Tupac. Believe it was Tuesday, May 7th. A security guard was shot and is in serious condition at Drake's house, and Drake had intruders on Wednesday, May 8th, and Thursday, May 9th, as well at his. So not blaming Kendrick Lamar, but these things are serious. I remember when this feud first started, my first reaction was, I hope nobody gets hurt. So, this is, Kendrick and Drake going at it, but it's hard to control your fan bases. And, ultimately, they can't really control their fan bases because they're big and whatnot. So, yeah, I think this is over. There hasn't been any new songs lately. And again, I'm not, blaming this on Kendrick, because he just, he had his say and Drake had his say and whatnot. But I think, I don't think this is a coincidence or is an accident. I think, those incidents at Drake's house were related to, this rap beef. So yeah, I've been marinating on this for a good minute. There's so much notes I have here. This has been simmering since 2014. They've been, low key kind of throwing diss at each other, and they've worked together before. I mean, if you remember too, J. Cole was also, initially put his song out there and then retracted it. And I think, I know Suge Knight went after J. Cole for pulling the song down, but I think it's his pulling the song down was in line with his brand. So I don't think, and I mean, I think Suge Knight's quote was, this is gangster rap, and, you gotta, at some point, battle somebody, but, J. Cole ain't a gangster rapper. And for that matter, neither is Drake and Kendrick Lamar, but, Kendrick has more street cred than Drake. So I don't blame, J. Cole for what he did. I mean, it wasn't, this was between Kendrick and Drake, and, J. Cole jumped in and was like, wait a minute, I'm out. I can't blame him. Most of the online folks and everybody's, declared Kendrick the winner, and I'll go through my stuff and we'll get it, we'll see where we stand at the end. So my three things basically will be the songwriting. Each of them had about 4 songs in this. Was it part of, where does it fit in their brands and strategy? So those are the 3 things I'm going to look at. But, quickly, I mean, when I talked, the tradition of black music and jazz and how, after the concerts, backstage or, in the back of the restaurant, the jazz guys would go up against each other and battle to see who was better. Doo-wop, from the late 40s and, through the 50s. I mean, people would get on the, you'd have 4 street corners and 3 doo-wop groups battling out, and whoever got the bigger crowd won. And of course in funk, I mean, let's take it to the stage, that Funkadelic album, 1975. I mean, the competition was live, and so competition's been there in black music for a long time. and but it was usually performance based rather than lyrically. The first big um, rap battle actually was, the Roxanne Wars from 1984 to 1985, and Roxanne, UTFO. They, one of the, who knows if it actually happened or not. It was probably they, they tried to talk to Roxanne, get a number, ask her out or whatever, and she was stuck up and said no. So they wrote a song about it. Now, did it actually happen? Probably not. Maybe it did. Maybe it was someone else's name. I mean, most guys, we all get, basically, turned down for dates. Was her name Roxanne? Did they change the name? Who knows? But, so out of that became Roxanne's Revenge with Roxanne Shante, then the real Roxanne, Sparky DJ's turn. She came out. Then, let's see. Then there was a bunch of other Roxanne's doctor, I think Roxanne's psychiatrist, the parents of Roxanne, Roxanne's brother, everybody jumped in there. So that was the first big rap war. And I remember, it was just like, okay, well, what's going to happen next? And this was different because there was a comic element to this. And it got a little, when you get Roxanne's parents, quote unquote, rapping in the Roxanne's brother, the defender, their family's honor and what all that. But it was the big thing out of this was this is the first time, with Roxanne Shante and the real Roxanne, that female rappers, finally, broke to the big stage. I mean, they're not the first female rappers, and this is early on in hip hop. I mean, in '84, I mean, you could still count how many hip hop albums came out that year on two hands. So, but this is the first time I remember woman, sitting in Columbus, Ohio, female rappers. I mean, it was all male before then. And as I said earlier, the other big, people talk about Nas and Jay-Z, but the other big one was obviously Tupac and Biggie. So what were people saying? First of all, I mean, Drake was fighting this was like WWE and ganging up. So he was fighting Rick Ross, Metro Boomin, The Weeknd, Kendrick Lamar, Future, and Ye. And he's collabed with all these folks at some time in the past. But hey, Drake picked some of those fights too, and push-ups, and we'll get to that. Big Daddy King had an interesting thing. He was like, he liked it at first, but everybody was fact checking, and that kind of, ruined it. He's like, it's about the flow and spit knowledge and whatnot, and not as much about, whether, the allegations you're making are factual. Hey, this is a different generation. They're going to fact check, and whatnot. Let me just say too, is where I come in on these allegations. I don't care. Look, we're all human. We all make mistakes. Both Kendrick and Drake live in the fishbowl. I mean, if some of that stuff ends up being true, okay. If not, whatever. I'm looking at, the quality of the songwriting, branding and strategy. So I kind of agree a little bit with Big Daddy Kane on the fact checking stuff. And plus, who knows? I mean, time will tell whether some of this is true or whether it's not. Yeah, so no evidence has been released or given on any of these, Drake's secret daughter, Drake underage women, Kendrick being abusive to his fiance or wife. I don't remember the specifics. I mean, we have not seen anything in any hard evidence in any of that. So, but let's do a quick take on what some of the people have said, and there'll be a little rustling of paper here, unfortunately, probably. So The Ringer, why Drake lost by Justin Charity. So Drake was unfocused, he says, because he went after everybody and their mama. And I mean, I think he went after the Weeknd and um, uh, Rick Ross. And I don't know if Rick, if he went after Rick first or Rick went after him first. But yeah, but that's Drake being Drake. That's his brand. I mean, that's, if Drake's going to get in a fight and get in a rap war, and he, something's lingering with someone else in the past, Drake's gonna go after him. That's his brand. So, and plus he's the big dog. I mean, he's at the top of 95, 96 billion streams, and I think number two in this era's 5 billion streams behind him. I mean, he's Elvis and the Beatles right now. So, I mean, he's gonna, that's Drake being Drake. Number two, Drake was inflexible. Okay. That's getting into the nitty gritty. I don't know. I think he was fine on that. The other point three out of this Ringer article, Drake underestimated his trustworthiness. I guess Drake, this is his third big beef, and he made some claims in one of his other rap wars, and none of that stuff was ever substantiated. Well, I'm with Big Daddy Kane here. I don't, it's more about the craftsman and the musicianship than, who could, who paid the most for the best private detectives. Number four, Drake underestimated his own creepiness. Okay, whatever. Number five, Drake misunderstood Kendrick Lamar. And six, Drake misunderstood the conflict. And I think that's where it goes in about Drake being unfocused. One of the themes, I'm going to come back to is Drake's the big dog. He's he runs the charts right now. I mean, right now, May 2024, Taylor Swift runs the concert scene, and Drake rules the charts. And that's just, and Drake's strategy of releasing music, doing albums and a new single every 6 weeks. I mean, hey, if you're not a Drake fan, you're going to get sick of Drake, and there's a lot of, the top dog always has haters, and a lot of them. So I think a lot of that's, playing out here. Let me just say too, I did a whole episode on Drake as a songwriter. I argue he's one of the 10 best songwriters of all time. So, I have love for Drake, and I did, To Pimp a Butterfly, I did a whole episode on that for Kendrick Lamar. So I respect both artists. They're both geniuses in my mind. So I'm not a Drake hater. I'm definitely not a Kendrick hater either. One of the other charges that have been raised and leveled against Drake in this battle is that they're using other terms, but other than the cultural appropriation when it comes to Drake, but they're, I mean, they're not going to the extreme of calling him a cultural appropriator, which he is not. But cultural vulture's been used. I think Rick Ross. This is Rick Ross and Kendrick have made these charges. Kendrick Lamar said Drake is a colonizer. A.D. Carson, who's a hip-hop professor at the University of Virginia, also, I think he said he's done a hip-hop album as his dissertation. He's called Drake a cultural tourist. I mean, so again, this is a watered-down version of a cultural appropriation, and it's garbage. I mean, I get a lot of people don't like Drake, and this plays well in the streets, if you're Rick Ross, and it plays well with Rick Ross's base. But 25 years from now, when the music historians write the history, on this era, this ain't gonna hold any water. I mean, the cultural appropriator, Clarence Thomas, the Nita Hill hearing, when he said high-tech lynching, because they came after him about the sexual harassment stuff. Look, um, Clarence Thomas hasn't done a damn thing for black people, in his entire life, and he stood in opposition to the black community politically. Drake does not stand in opposition to the black community politically. I mean, so no, he's not a cultural appropriator. Cultural tourist, you know, Drake does what all the great ones, what Prince did. Prince, the Minneapolis sound was funk meets a little bit of punk meets new wave. I mean, Prince borrowed from different genres and melded stuff together. I mean, the godfather of modern music, Ray Charles, took blues, jazz, and gospel and melded them all together. People have dabbled in them. People have done that, since Ray, but Ray was the first. I mean, Ray Charles and Prince are not cultural tourists. Yeah, so let's take a quick look at the poster boy for cultural appropriation. I mean, the uh, the music historians have pegged Pat Boone as the ultimate cultural appropriator. In the 50s, he was the second most uh, prolific music artist in the 50s, only to Elvis. Elvis was one. Pat Boone was first. El, you know, Pat Boone had he covered a lot of black artists. Other folks did it, but he was famous for that. And a lot of, most, none of these black artists, got paid for those Pat Boone, um, cover versions that he did of their music. Uh, because, and, in fairness, most of the white artists did not own the masters back then either. So, I mean, they were owned by the company or the manager or whatnot. Uh, Pat Boone liked to refer to himself as the midwife of rock and roll, and his argument was that white kids liked my version of the stuff, and so I led them to these black artists in the original one. So that's Pat Boone's basic defense of what he did. He did say that Fat Domino and Little Richard were appreciative of his doing cover versions because you know, he opened up the door for the white, kids who liked his versions to go find the real thing. And he also said, I didn't try to mimic black singers, like Elvis. I sang it like a white singer. Okay. Thanks, Pat. But here's the rub when it comes to Pat Boone, and it's not reported as much. He just wasn't, snatching every black hit out there and recording them. I mean, he was a conservative Republican who supported a lot of conservative Republicans, starting from the 50s all the way to the present, or maybe back maybe Dixiecrats or whoever, or I mean the Republicans in the 50s were not the Republicans of today, but he has supported conservative elected officials, from jump, and continues to do so that stand in opposition to the black community. So he benefited financially from black artists by using their music. He claims, he did open up the door and was a gateway for white kids to find the real thing because he was covering them, and that some black, musicians from that era, are appreciative of his borrowing of their music. Okay. But, regardless of where Pat Boone's legacy is problematic, and Drake is not Pat Boone. Again, Drake does not stand in opposition politically to the black community. Now, a lot of folks in the streets argue that Drake doesn't stand, on anything politically, period, and they have a problem with that. That's a legitimate, um, complaint. But, again, hip hop is always is a big tent with lots of pods and umbrellas. And, you know, there's always been the Drakes out there, whether it's MC Hammer, LL Cool J, Will Smith. I mean, there's always been these guys who are just, crafting great songs and are not getting political. I mean, if you go look at classical rap, most of them were not political, you know, and most of them weren't, overtly. I mean, but so, but that doesn't, just because he's not, talking about political stuff, it doesn't make him a cultural appropriator if he's, running, if he's borrowing from different genres. That's not cultural appropriation. I mean, all great artists borrow from others. Okay, so let's get into the nitty gritty. I have three criteria. Um, the craft of their songs, the uh, strategy, and does it fit within your brand? So let me say 7 Minute Drill by J. Cole. Like that song. That's a banger. And this is, J. Cole's in the groove right now. I've not done any episodes on J. Cole, but I'm a big J. Cole fan. I do think they are the big three. Um, when I was jumping back into music, I listened to, J. Cole and The Weeknd immediately caught my attention because they kind of reminded me of my early music. So I'm a big J. Cole fan. I think he killed it with 7 Minute Drill. And then of course there's Champagne Moments with Rick Ross. And I've already talked about, I mean, that plays well with the Rick Ross's bass, and that plays well with the streets. But I don't think, the Drake as cultural appropriator is gonna hold any water. And most people, even when they break it down and call Kendrick the winner, they're not saying, they're not buying that argument either. So the songs, Push Up, I think Push Ups is the best song of all these diss songs. I mean, it's classic Drake. I'll get to this when we come to branding. One of Drake left the door open. These last two albums, Her Loss and what's the other one? The latest one, uh, The Dogs. Yeah, the stuff, this rough one. For All the Dogs, 2023, and Her Loss, 2022. Yeah, Drake left the door open because, two albums of Gangsta Drake ain't, good stuff there. And he sprinkled Gangsta Drake in, with Jimmy Crooks and Knife Talk. But he just gave us a big helping of Gangsta Drake the last few albums. And, I don't know what happened to King Drake with the 95 billion streams and sitting at the top of the Billboard charts in this era and the streaming king. But, hopefully, I mean, Push Ups is King Drake. I mean, that's Drake. That's his brand. It's Drake at his best. Like it or not, because I know there's a lot of Drake haters out there. So I think Push Ups is the best of all of the diss. Tailor Made Lifestyle, which is pulled because of the Tupac AI. I don't know what Drake was thinking on that. That's the worst by far of all of these. Particularly because Tupac lost his life and Biggie, you know, because of a beef, a rap beef. Family Matters, 7 minutes plus, unfocused, wasn't very good. Yeah, if you're gonna do a diss song, and I love long songs. I have my last two songs are 9 minutes and 40 seconds and 10 minutes plus. But don't do a diss song at 7 minutes. Short and sweet. But a lot of folks have dissed, The Hurt Part 6. I like it. I mean, it's like, oh, Drake sounded weary and resigned. Drake said basically like, I'm done with this. I'm on to other things. If you want to do some more diss stuff, go right ahead. But I'm getting, I found King Drake, and I'm getting back in King Drake mode. This is, he rising above it all. This is Drake's brand, and this is Drake in King Drake mode again. Like, okay, we had our little thing. See ya. Going to Kendrick Lamar. 616 in LA was okay. Euphoria to me is his best. This is, Kendrick and his brand. Kendrick just killing it. Not Like Us is good, but Euphoria I think is his best one. Meet the Grams is, again is 7 minutes plus or 6 minutes and 33 seconds. Too long. Just like Drake, too long. And then he got really, really personal. It's almost like Drake got up in his head. Now, here's the other problem I have with this, Meet the Grams, is that, this is clearly done. When it comes to strategy, I'm jumping ahead a little, but yes, and a lot of people were, gave Kendrick kudos for, basically seeing ahead and knowing that Drake was going to bring family stuff in, and then having the song ready to go, because Meet the Grams was released less than an hour after Drake released Family Matters, and both of these, the whole family stuff is probably the two weakest. They both of their weakest songs. He's writing a letter to Drake's son and then his mother and his aunt. This supposed daughter out there that Drake won't acknowledge. It's just, sometimes Kendrick can do too much. I mean, sometimes I just want to be like, Kendrick, you're a genius. You don't need to do all that. And, that's happening here with Meet the Grams. I was on, in one of the, I'm a Gemini, that. Kendrick's a Gemini, and I was in one of the Gemini chat rooms. One of them said, leave it to the Kendrick, typical Gemini, taking, sometimes you just take shit too far. And yes, he did, at the time I was in the middle of the whole feud. And so I was like, I wonder what song he's talking about. Well, Meet the Grams. This is the one. And yes, Geminis, if you really do get under and pisses off, we will take it too far. And I think not only that, it just seems like Drake is in his head, and it's strategically, I think it's problematic because this was done. He knew Drake was coming after his family, and, this is the song he prepared, and it just, again, doesn't work for me. So who wins? I think Drake slightly wins. I think he has two, songs where King Drake is back. Push-Ups and The Heart Part 6. Euphoria is the banger for, Kendrick Lamar, and I do think, Not Like Us is also really good, so I'm going to give a slight edge to Drake here, when it comes to the music. Strategy. So this has been simmering for years. Kendrick has been looking for this fight for a long time, and I'm a Gemini, he's a Gemini. He probably has 3 or 4 albums of diss tracks, on Drake, and that's why I don't kind of understand Meet the Grams. I mean, Geminis, everybody else is like, planning the fight, they go, or confrontation, they go A, B, C, D, and most Geminis are going at least K, right? But you give, a Gemini 10 years to plan an attack, they're going to Z. I mean, Kendrick was, I looked at his Instagram page. The dude has made like 2 Instagram posts. I mean, he's a typical Gemini, just wants to do music and be left alone. And, Drake is, what's the term he used? Doing sneak diss. He's like, dude, I just want to do music like we've collabed before, just let it go. And hey, Geminis are the ultimate, fuck around and find out folks. And, he done pushed the wrong buttons and just pissed Kendrick off, and Kendrick had to do what Kendrick had to do. And he won the street. He's won the streets. Now when the battle with the historians, probably not. But hey, you don't care. He won the streets. He won the battle he wanted to win. He knew what he was doing. So strategy wise, Kendrick was clearly the aggressor here. Going back to that Ringer article, Drake wasn't that flexible. Kendrick was a lot more focused because he just went after Drake, and Drake went into King Drake mode and picked a lot of fights. But that's Drake being Drake. If Drake didn't do that, he wouldn't be, he wouldn't be King Drake. So strategy, even though, Meet the Grams was problematic, I got to give this to Kendrick, because, and here's the other thing. Kendrick picked the perfect time. Drake left the door open. He waited until Drake was vulnerable and folks were weary of gangster Drake and picked the perfect time to go after him. That's why he's won the streets. And, as far as the folks who've lived through this, Kendrick will always be the winner. The historians will weigh in and it'll be different. But, so strategically, Kendrick won the battle because he planned, he picked the perfect time to go after Drake, and he won the battle as far as the streets go. There are different audiences here. Finally, my last criteria, branding. I just said it, Drake left the door open, Kendrick picked the perfect time to go after him. So that's why I give, strategy to Kendrick, because he and even though he wasn't perfect in his execution of strategy, he was the aggressor, and the aggressor usually does well in a fight. I'll call this a battle. So, if you want to call this a battle, then, as it stands now, even though I think Drake slightly won when it came to songcraft, but this is a battle, and it strategy wise, Kendrick is the clear winner. Now, when it comes to branding, because that's my thing. I do a lot of branding stuff. Again, Drake left it wide open, and Kendrick, moved in and attacked and by and large, he did what he wanted. He accomplished what he wanted to accomplish. Was he perfect? No. The other thing, I think Kendrick did when it came to branding is, there are musicians out there. I did a ZZ Top where I said the music speaks for itself. There's just, what was the Beatles brand? It was just good music. And so if you would have told me before, asked me what is Kendrick's brand, well, it's good music. And experimental music. The fact that Kendrick basically pegged himself as, the successor to Prince, and basically, pegged Drake as Michael Jackson, did something for I'm a huge, Prince fan. So that did something for Drake's brand. Nobody in this, and this generation has embraced Prince and like, that's my dude, and that's how, that's how I move, and he did that, and I think that helps, that sits well with me, because it's true. Now, uh, Drake is Michael. I think, Drake's a lot more innovative and adventurous musically than Michael was. But Drake is Prince light when it comes to innovation and experimentation, and Kendrick Lamar is not. So I think Kendrick wins. You know, that's a plus. So on Kendrick seizing the moment, it had nothing to do with Drake. That's just um, Kendrick handling his business and good execution. Um, so again, what going back to this problematic gangster Drake. Uh, and I'm surprised nobody went when particularly Rick Ross. Rick Ross would have been a lot more effective if he would have gone back to the Easy E, real motherfucking G's when he went after Dr. Dre and called Dr. Dre a studio gangster. Now, in retrospect, that Dr. Dre I don't think is a studio gangster, but I mean, if you would have thrown the term studio gangster at Drake, I think that's a legitimate criticism. I think it sticks, and all the cultural appropriation stuff. The studio gangster thing sticks, and that's, I'm surprised they didn't reach back into history and because that would have been a huge win, because it's part of hip hop lore and hip hop history, but they didn't go there. But still, I think a slight edge. I think again to Kendrick, because he shored up his own brand, and he took advantage of Drake's strain from his brand. I mean, he's that's look if Drake is King Drake and writing stuff and sprinkling in the gangster stuff. I mean, look, you can do Knife Talk and Jimmy Crooks and sprinkle that in, and it's fiction. But when you're doing the whole album of that, then you're like, yeah, this is me, and it's like, but that's not you, and that's the essential argument that Kendrick and Rick Ross were making. So, I mean, Drake left the door open, but hey, Kendrick went after him at the right time and took advantage. So, who won? Well, let's go by the numbers. Billboard May 3rd through the 6th, Kendrick Lamar's catalog, streaming wise, was up 49%. Drake's was up 5%. Well, no, I actually had a 5% decrease. Again, this is May 3rd to the 6th. This is USA Today reported on May 12th. Washington Post, May 14th. May 3rd through 9, Kendrick Lamar's catalog by then was up 149%, and Drake's catalog was up 16%. So, hey, and I saw somewhere where, just off of the diss tracks alone, that Drake had made $600,000 off, and I don't know what stream. I think it was just Spotify. So, hey, I mean, yeah, you can't argue with the numbers there for Kendrick. I mean, he's a clear winner here. I mean, boosted his catalog. He's sharpened the differences between he and Drake. He's also, shored up his brand, and embracing, the similarities that he has with Prince. So Kendrick is a winner. But, I mean, Drake's still up 16%, and Drake, King Drake is still King Drake. Sometimes, you got to, when you stray and lose your way, when Drake has done that the last 2 years a little bit as far as branding. Sometimes, an enemy attacking you, wakes you up and sharpens your focus. As I said, I think, King Drake had two bangers, of songs. And, if Drake gets back, if King Drake is let out of the witness protection program and he starts, operating out of King Drake and rather than Gangster Drake, then, Drake's a winner in this as well, but it's back to being Drake. So I think, probably both of them are going to end up being winners in this. So I think Drake's, is going to get his stride back and his groove back. And, because look, Taylor's coming on the charts. Taylor's trying to run him down. I mean, I think the last album, Taylor, the first week, songs 1 through 14 she had, and then the album before that, the new one, not the remake, songs 1 through 10 were Taylor. So, I mean, Drake still has a big lead when it comes to the top 5 and top 10s of all time against anybody. But Taylor's coming, and then King Drake needs to get back on the ball and defend his turf, so to speak. So I think in the bigger picture, I mean, Drake will probably, will still be the big dog. He's still going to be King Drake. Well, I mean, the interesting question, and out of this too, I was thinking, I want to do, in the next couple of weeks, I'm doing an episode called Take the Throne, and how do the Beatles dethrone Elvis, and Michael Jackson, was finally dethroned. I mean, how do you take, who does it and how does that happen? And I don't, Kendrick wasn't trying to take down. He's not trying to replace. I mean, Prince never tried to replace, Michael. Could he have taken Michael down? Maybe. I mean, Prince is the most talented artist, in the last 70 years, if you ask me. But Prince didn't have the desire to take Michael down. I don't think Kendrick does either. I mean, when Purple Rain was out, Prince, briefly, was that dude. And I think, briefly this might be Kendrick's Purple Rain moment. I mean, because he, the public, he got more streams, and I think, he won the streets. And so I think, but it'll be interesting. It'll also be interesting to see, ultimately can Drake hold off, Taylor Swift? Is she gonna run him down when it comes to the most top 5s and top 10s and, the most streams of all time? I mean, can Taylor run him down? That'll be interesting to see if that happens. So I'm going to, end with saying, it's a mixed bag here. And I think both Kendrick and Drake won. I'm going to assume that Drake, that King Drake is back, and that, he's going to, sometimes you got to lose to win. And I think, that's what's going on here. And I do think Drake did a little better in the song category too. So anyway, thanks for coming through. Had fun. Man, did a lot of research on this one and sat on it for a minute. But interesting, epic battle. Really the third one, I don't think, the Roxanne was big, Biggie, Tupac in this one. I don't think Jay-Z and Nas are big as the other three. I just, people weren't sitting on the edge of their seat like they were for the three I just named. And of course, most people don't even remember Roxanne, but that was the first one they really laid down. And that's the one, where Big Daddy Kane was talking about the humor and the wit and all that, that's gone. That's gone. But the blueprint, still comes out of the Roxanne. And I mean, Biggie and Tupac, that was a much more serious one because, Tupac, accused Biggie of being involved in, the shooting at that studio. So yeah, that was a lot more serious, and it ended a lot more tragically as well. I don't expect, just because of the things that happened in Drake's house, I think both have said what they wanted to say. Too much money's at stake. Here's the other thing: is they're both under the umbrella of Universal. I don't know if either one are with Universal, but they're with subsidiaries of Universal. And Universal's like, yeah, we're making too much money off of you to knock it off. So I think it's done. It was interesting. Got a good episode out of this, and the whole, what is black culture and all that. There were a lot of other bigger issues raised, even though, clearly, Drake is not a cultural appropriator. But that stuff, is thrown around a lot, and I think, this battle helped to kind of sharpen what is and what is not cultural appropriation. So thanks for coming through. I got 5 albums out on all the major streaming services, including, right here on YouTube. I'm also write science fiction fantasy novels. I got 2 novels and a novella on Amazon, and so I'm looking forward to doing more episodes. This was a fun episode. This is great living through this battle. We got a couple. We got Nicki Minaj and battling, I think, Megan Thee Stallion. There's a couple things going on, but someone's always beefing. But this is, people been waiting for this one for a while, and they got it. And I think, people got their money's worth here. So thanks again for coming through, and see you next episode.